Let's talk about style. Man, this is a big one. I know that there are a lot of videos out there that speak about how to find your style or how to develop your own artistic style. Beginning artists, especially, are often very concerned with finding their own style. So, let's take a look at the range of styles that is out there and the difference between these styles. Here on the screen, you can see a character style range that Mike and I worked on a while back. Now we were having a conversation about style, and of course we're artists, so we wanted to make this all more visual. Now it's easier to talk about when you have an image in front of you. So we created this what we call character style range, and you can see the two axes here. Now we have line going through color and sculpture on this side, and here we go from abstracts to realism, or you could say more accurately from realism to abstract, because realism of course is the starting point. Based on that, we have everything else. Now it all starts with reality, because in order to abstract or simplify something, first you need to understand the real thing being, as the name says, reality, what we observe on a day-to-day basis in this case. So there's where we start. If you're doing figure drawing, for example, you start by actually drawing what you observe, what you see. And once you have that understanding, it enables you to what is typically referred to as stylizing it or designing it, simplifying it, all those things. And then what we did is we took the work of some of our favorite artists out there and also some IPs, like you have Disney Infinity up here, you have some sculptures, and for each piece of artwork we had a discussion as to where exactly on this scale, this style range, would that image fit. And honestly, some of them were easier to place than others. Like we have Alex Ross here, Carlos Monte, Frank Frazetta. Those are clearly more real in terms of the style that they work in. There were certain comic book artists that we had to play around and move around a little bit to really find where it fits relative to everything else. And on this side you would have what you would see in Saturday morning cartoons, like you have Kim Possible here, you have some of Sean Galloway's work, this is Otto Smith's. The main thing to notice here is that the designs get more and more simplified as we go from here towards the screen left. This is super detailed. Here it becomes simpler and simpler. Now let's take a closer look with this example, and hopefully it will become even clearer. We're dealing with drawing here, so our primary tool is line. So let's take a look at the line in the realistic style, the semi-realistic, and the abstract. And let's see what differences we can discover. So if we look here, let's start here. This is from Alex Ross. I don't know who the two other artists are specifically. I know this is Alex Ross's work from Superman, as you can see. And if you look at the line, and if I were to duplicate the line, you will see that the line it has a lot more detail and organicness, bumpiness to it. So you have all these little bumps and details in the stroke. So that would be the realism. So a lot of detail in the line. If we look at this guy, which is I think Sabretooth from one of the old X-Men animations, all of a sudden the line is much more simpler. It's much more simplified stroke. Here we have some details. So here we would have some small details where the folds are. So you can see that there is a level of simplification that happens from here to here. So the line starts becoming more streamlined, and there's still a little bit of detail here and there in the strokes. And then once we get here to the abstracts, notice that all the detail and the bumpiness in the line is pretty much gone. Now if we look at this area, this is pretty much very simple streamlined stroke. There's like no bumpiness in it. It's very efficient in a sense. Now, one analogy that we often use for this is like ironing out the lines. Meaning, imagine you have what is called in English, like an ironing table, and you place a piece of cloth on it. And let's say you take like the hot iron, and you start ironing the piece of cloth or fabric. What would happen? You would get rid of all these wrinkles, and this would become a more simple, streamlined piece of fabric. Now that's essentially what's happening here. You're like ironing out all those little bumps and nuances, and slowly we start bringing the strokes to its bare essence until we reach this level of simplicity. If you compare Superman's jacket here, for example, notice all the little bumps and nuances in the stroke. It's like very textured, organic. And if I look at the clothes here, so let's look at this, for example. Notice the line, very simple. It's very simple strokes, which then creates very simple abstract shapes. That is one of the main differences, as we can see here, across the styles. Realism has a lot more detail and nuance and bumpiness in the line, and as you start going towards abstraction, the line becomes more simple and streamlined until we reduce that line to its bare essence. Hopefully this inspires you to go and study different styles if you haven't done so. I think the best thing you can do, even if you want to stick in, let's say, one particular style range. Let's say for myself, I started here. I started with realism when I did concept art for video games. So I started with super detailed drawings, like hyper detailed renderings. And then as time went by, especially as I became a force student and later instructor, my interest shifted towards more simplicity. I became more intrigued by reducing reality down to its bare essence. So let's say that this is the style that you want to work with. I think it's still a very good idea to study the whole range so that you staying here becomes a choice and not a limitation. Then you have options. Or maybe you're someone who likes to be able to design in the whole style range. Now it opens up even more possibilities. You can work on a project that requires more realistic arts, or you can work in a more comic bookish kind of style, or you can go like super simple, like again, Saturday morning cartoons. When you design your characters, this is another variable to think about, like what style do you want the character to be in? Realism, same realism, or abstract. You can have a lot of fun playing around with that, playing around with style. This is one sample video of our Force Character Design with Story workshop. Do you want to design appealing characters that tell a story like you see in your favorite games, films, and comics? There are 13 more videos awaiting you that will teach you important skills like working with proportions, shape language, drawing different body types, and how to use contrast for maximum visual impact. Get the full workshop using the link in the description and level up your character design skills.